This Pikachu cake is sure to shock and delight all of your friends and family, whether they're Pikachu fans or just love a good slice of cake. In this video, I'll show you how I made this cake. Check out the video description for a link to all the recipes, ingredients, and tools I used to make this cake. So let's get started. For Pikachu's body, I used 3 20cm or 8-inch cakes that I cut horizontally in two. I cut the sides of the cake boards and cakes about 5 cm or 2 inches to make a flat side. Then I just stacked and filled the cakes by following the same steps. Spread some filling on one cake board and place a cake layer on top. Moisten it with sugar syrup and spread filling on top, about 250 to 300 grams of filling per layer. Place another cake layer on top, moisten it with sugar syrup and spread some more filling. Lastly, place the third cake layer on top and moisten it with sugar syrup. I created support for my cake using bubble tea straws. Cut the straws to the height of the cake and then insert them into the cake. Repeat the process to stack another cake on top. Cover the body of Pikachu with plastic wrap and freeze it for 1 to 2 hours. Freezing the cake for a few hours before carving will make it easier to carve without crumbling. Carve the body using a serrated knife. If you are not confident in your freehand carving skills, consider using a template to guide your carving. I usually just print a picture of what I want to carve, just for reference, and proceed with the freehand carving. I check the image once in a while to make sure I end up with the right shapes. Use cake scraps and chocolate ganache to build up Pikachu's belly and legs. The ganache will act as glue. Now on to making the head. For Pikachu's head, I used 18cm or 7-inch cakes. I cut the cake board into an oval shape. This will be the base of Pikachu's head. I also used a 13cm or 5-inch dome cake and round cake board. I stacked and filled the cake in a similar way as the body. Don't forget to insert bubble tea straws in the first round cake to create some support before placing the dome cake on top. Freeze the head for a bit and then carve it using a serrated knife and seal the crumbs with a bit of ganache. On to stacking and covering the cake with ganache and fondant. Use cake scraps and chocolate ganache to build up the nose and mouth a bit. Crumb coat the stacked cake with a thin layer of ganache. Your ganache needs to be cool to the touch and have a thick pouring consistency. Refrigerate the cake for 1 to 2 hours. Then apply the last layer of ganache and smooth it out using a straight or offset spatula. It doesn't have to be perfect as the cake will be covered with fondant. Refrigerate the cake until the chocolate ganache hardens. Now on to the fondant work. Place Pikachu on a cake drum. Use a bit of fondant to build up Pikachu's legs and the nose and mouth. This is only if it's still needed and you didn't build this using cake scraps and ganache. Knead and roll your yellow fondant to cover the cake. When working with fondant, always sprinkle some powdered sugar or cornstarch on your work surface so that the fondant doesn't stick. Also, knead the fondant before rolling it so that it has a workable consistency and it doesn't feel and look dry. Gently lift the fondant, place it on the side of the cake, started in the middle of Pikachu's back. Start unrolling the fondant from the side of the cake and across to the other side. I covered Pikachu's body first and then the head separately, creating a seam right around the neck and at the back. It's easier than trying to cover it all in one go. Smooth the fondant with a fondant smoother or the palm of your hand, starting from the top. Start to gently pull the fondant out and down around the sides of the cake using one hand and spread the excess fondant and smooth it out using a fondant smoother or your other hand. Keep turning the cake and repeating the steps until the sides are smooth and without any ruffles formed towards the bottom. Always start working on the front of the cake to make sure that it looks great. If the back is not looking as neat and you'll have seams that you can hide that well, that's fine, but you don't want that on Pikachu's face. Now let's make Pikachu prettier. For the color, roll out a strip of black fondant that's about 8 cm or 3 inches wide. Cut a zigzag pattern on one side using a sharp knife. I made 2 pieces, one for the front and one for the back. Attach everything to the cake using a bit of water. Use circle cutters to make the eyes out of black fondant and red cheeks out of red fondant. All the other details are just shaped by hand. Let's move on to making the ears, tail, and arms. Cut 2 ears out of styrofoam. The best way to cut styrofoam without making a mess is using a hot knife. Stick 2 bamboo skewers in each ear, leaving out at least 8 centimeters or about 3 inches. The ears are super tall but relatively thin, so they need to be lightweight to hold up nicely. That's why I use styrofoam instead of regular cake, which tends to be heavier. You can also make these out of Rice Krispies Treats mixed with melted mini marshmallows. See video description for more details on how to work with Rice Krispies cereals. I covered the ears with a thin layer of ganache, then I brushed a bit of water on the hardened ganache and covered them with yellow fondant. For the tail, I cut out the shape out of cardboard, then I brushed it with some water and covered it in yellow fondant. For the tip of the tail, I rolled black fondant and cut a zigzag pattern using a sharp knife. Then I brushed some water on the tip of the tail and wrapped the black fondant around. For each arm, you can place 2 smaller skewers in between 2 cardboard pieces and glue them together. Leave about a third of the skewer out so that you can stick them in the cake. Then cover them with yellow fondant just as you did with the tail. And now on to the final touches. Make Pikachu's feet out of yellow fondant and attach them to the cake using a bit of water. Insert the arms in the sides of the cake. Place the tail at the back. For me, it just leans on the cake. I didn't attach it with anything special. But if you want it attached, you can secure it in place by brushing a bit of water where the tail meets the cake and passing 1 to 2 toothpicks through the cardboard tail and cake. Insert the ears in the cake before serving, or earlier if you have a tall enough fridge. I couldn't fit Pikachu in my fridge with the ears on. And that's it. I hope you find this tutorial useful. If you give this a try, I'd love to see your cakes. Thanks for watching!